What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Bryce Crawford podcast. I'm Bryce, and today we're on Luke chapter 23 of the 24-day Luke Christmas Challenge. Guys, second to last day. We're almost done. This is insane. This is by far the most powerful chapter that I think we're going to read in all of Luke. I mean, it's the crucifixion of Jesus. Before we get into it, guys, January 19th is our first ever live podcast show. I want to see you there. All ages are welcome. It doesn't matter what the website says to get your tickets. All ages are welcome. Go to jesusinthestreet.org/tickets and get your tickets. Now, let's dive into Luke chapter 23. I'm going to set the scene really quick for you guys so that when we read some stuff, it's just going to kind of make sense when we read through it. All right? So every year, there was a tradition where they would release one prisoner on Passover. Okay? So keep that in mind when we read about Jesus and Barabbas. But every year, there was one prisoner that would get released every year on Passover. It was tradition. Verse 1. Then the whole company of them arose and brought him before Pilate. They brought Jesus to Pilate. And they began to accuse him, saying, "We found this man misleading our nation and forbidding us to give tribute to Caesar, and saying that he himself is Christ, a king." And Pilate asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" And he answered him, "You've said so." Then Pilate said to the chief priests and the crowds, "I find no guilt in this man." But they were urgent, saying, "He stirs up the people, teaching throughout all Judea from Galilee even to this place." So when Pilate had heard this, he asked whether the man was a Galilean. And when he learned that he belonged to Herod's jurisdiction, he sent him over to Herod, who was himself in Jerusalem at that time. When Herod saw Jesus, he was very glad, for he had long desired to see him, because he had heard about him, and he was hoping to see some sign done by him. So he questioned him at some length, but he made no answer. Jesus did not respond to Herod's questioning. The chief priests and the scribes stood by, vehemently accused him, and Herod with his soldiers treated him with contempt and mocked him. Then arraying him in splendid clothing, he sent him back to Pilate. And Herod and Pilate became friends with each other that very day, for before this they had been at enmity with each other. Pilate then called together the chief priests and the rulers and the people, and said to them, "You brought me this man as one who was misleading the people. And after examining him before you, behold, I did not find this man guilty of any of your charges against him." So keep in mind, Pilate's making it very clear, this guy's blood is not on my hands. That's what he's doing. He's like, I did not find anything wrong with him. I didn't find him anything guilty of anything. So if anyone's going to condemn him to crucifixion, it's not going to be me. Neither did Herod. Herod didn't find it either, for he sent him back to us. Look, nothing deserving death has been done by him. I will therefore punish him and release him. But they all cried out, "Away with this man, and release to us Barabbas." Barabbas was a rebel, the leader of an insurrection against the government of Rome. Rome did not like Barabbas, okay? They did not like him. And the people are asking, the same people that were praising him just a week ago, were like, release Barabbas. There are some writings, not all, this isn't confirmation, some even said that Barabbas might have been a rapist. So this is a very intense man. A man who had been thrown into prison for an insurrection, started in the city, and for murder. Insurrection is just another fancy term for rebellion. Pilate addressed them once more, desiring to release Jesus, but they kept shouting, "Crucify him, crucify him." A third time he said to them, "Why? What evil has he done? I have found in him no guilt deserving death. I will therefore punish and release him." But they were urgent, demanding with loud cries that he should be crucified. And their voices prevailed. So Pilate decided that their demand should be granted. He released the man who had been thrown into prison for insurrection and murder, for whom they asked, but he delivered Jesus over to their will. When I read this passage and I see Barabbas, a rebel, the leader of an insurrection, a murderer, possibly a rapist, the worst of the worst, and in his place, Jesus, perfect, has never done anything wrong, is about to die the death that the wicked man Barabbas deserved. And here's the thing, back in that time period, if you were destined for crucifixion, you prepared your own cross. So keep in mind, Barabbas probably had no idea he was getting released, prepared his own cross, getting ready, and then all of a sudden, this guy named Jesus, who's done absolutely nothing wrong, takes the cross that you've prepared and dies on the cross that you prepared for yourself. And I look at Barabbas and I say, I am Barabbas. I'm the man that's done incredibly wrong, that's failed so many times, that's extremely flawed, that's wicked and deserving of death, and my sin and my actions I'm solely responsible for, I've prepared my separation from God. I deserve hell. I deserve death. The cross that I've prepared for myself, I prepared for myself. My own sin has crafted my own cross that I deserve to be nailed to and die that death. I deserve that. And then I look at Jesus, innocent, King of the Jews. All he's done is healed the sick, opened blind eyes, opened deaf ears, pour into the Jews of that time. And he's going to come in and take my cross that I prepared for myself. And him being innocent is going to take the punishment that I deserve, that I've crafted for myself. And as they led him away, they seized one Simon of Cyrene, who was coming in from the country, and laid on him the cross to carry in behind Jesus. So this man named Simon is carrying the cross for Jesus. There's some details left out here. You guys got to understand, Jesus was whipped 39 times with a whip called a cat of nine tails. And this cat of nine tails had strings on it, and at the end of the strings, it had glass and nails and rocks. So when you would get hit, it would wrap around your back. And when they would rip the whip away, it would rip your flesh away. They beat him 39 times. 40 was the legal limit, but they beat him 39 times in case they miscounted. So imagine infinite splinters going into your muscles, in your arteries, into your veins, because you have no flesh on your back and you can't carry your cross, so you got to have somebody else carry it for you. You're beaten under recognition. And there followed him a great multitude of the people and of women who were mourning and lamenting for him. But Jesus turned to the people mourning for him and said, "Daughters of Jerusalem, do not weep for me, but weep for yourselves and for your children." He says, don't weep for me. Weep for the people that reject me. For behold, the days are coming when they will say, blessed are the barren and the wombs that never bore and the breasts that never nursed. Normally you would think Jesus praised motherhood and children, and he does. But the reason he's saying blessed are the barren and the wombs that never bore, he's again prophesying about the things that's going to happen in AD 70, where Rome comes and levels out Jerusalem and takes down the temple and kills a bunch of Jews. Then they will begin to say to the mountains, fall on us, and to the hills, cover us. For if they do these things when the wood is green, what will happen when it is dry? When Jesus says, for if they do these things when the wood is green, what will happen when it is dry? Jesus is saying, if this is the fate of the innocent, then I can't even imagine what's going to happen to the guilty. If this death that Jesus is dying is the fate of an innocent man, then what will happen to those who reject him in this lifetime? Two others who were criminals were led away to be put to death with him. Sabbath was the next day, so they needed to kill him before Sabbath. And when they came to the place that is called the School, there they crucified him, and the criminals, one on his right and one on his left. And Jesus said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Once again, just a humble heart posture of Christ. Forgive them, they don't understand. And they cast lots to divide his garments, mocking Jesus. And the people stood by watching, but the ruler scoffed at him, saying, he saved others, let him save himself. If he's the Christ of God, his chosen one. The soldiers also mocked him, coming up and offering him sour wine, saying, if you're the king of the Jews, save yourself. There was also an inscription over him, this is the King of the Jews, to mock him. Now I love this next part. One of the criminals who were hanged railed at him, saying, are you not the Christ? Save yourself and us. But the other rebuked him, saying, do you not fear God, since you are under the same sentence of condemnation? And we indeed justly, for we are receiving the due reward of our deeds, but this man has done nothing wrong. And then he looks at Jesus and says, Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. So one of the thieves is saying, look, Jesus, just save me. I'm tired of being punished like this. If you're really Jesus, you can do it. And the other one says, listen, no, we deserve this. He's the one that doesn't deserve it. And he looks over at him and he says, Jesus, I'm deserving of this death. I'm not worthy of being in your presence, so all I ask is just please remember me. And he said to him, truly I say to you, today you will be with me in paradise. So then that brings up the question, what about someone like Jeffrey Dahmer, who's murdered so many people, who's done awful, nasty things? He claimed to have received Jesus into his heart before he died. Is he in heaven? I don't know. I don't judge hearts, only God does. But the reality is it doesn't matter about your past. If you have a true heart posture of receiving Jesus Christ, believing in him, putting your faith and trust in him, it doesn't matter how much time left you have in this life, you'll be saved. Verse 44, It was now about the 6th hour, and there was darkness over the whole land until the 9th hour, while the sun's light faded, and the curtain of the temple was torn in two. And Jesus, calling out with a loud voice, said, Father, into your hands I commit my spirit. When Jesus dies, the veil was torn on the temple, meaning that Jesus' intimate relationship with God, experienced the presence of God, the Spirit of God, wasn't just for specific people. It's now for everyone through the new covenant. And having said this, he breathed his last breath. Now when the centurion saw what had taken place, he praised God, saying, certainly this man was innocent. Notice how it takes till he dies. They all go, oh my gosh, he really is who he says he is. That's so silly to me. But then I can't really say that because I don't know how I would have reacted. I can't say, oh yeah, I would have never rejected Christ. I don't know how I would have reacted. I would want to think I wouldn't have. But man, it's like once he dies, we're like, oh, he really is the Christ. And all the crowds that had assembled from this spectacle, when they saw what had taken place, returned home beating their breasts. And all his acquaintances and the women who had followed him from Galilee stood at a distance watching these things. Verse 50 to close. Now there was a man named Joseph from the Jewish town of Arimathea. He was a member of the council, a good and righteous man who had not consented to their decision and action, and he was looking for the kingdom of God. This man went to Pilate and asked for the body of Jesus. Do you know who else brought Jesus' body to be buried? Nicodemus. And if we don't know who Nicodemus is, think about John chapter 3, verses 16 through 17, the most famous verses in the Bible. Who is Jesus talking to? Nicodemus, a religious Pharisee, who in this lifetime had the chance, he was curious about Jesus when Jesus was alive, and had the chance to follow him, but did not. And then he witnesses the crucifixion, and he does nothing but submit him, like he buries Christ. That's powerful. Then he took it down and wrapped it in a linen shroud and laid him in the tomb cut in stone where no one had ever yet been laid. It was the day of preparation, and the Sabbath was beginning. The women who had come with him from Galilee followed and saw the tomb and how his body was laid. Then they returned and prepared spices and ointments on the Sabbath. They rested according to the commandment. It's powerful. We're getting ready for chapter 24, the final Luke series. We just witnessed and read about the crucifixion of Jesus Christ, this gruesome death. Gruesome, but necessary to be united with him in a relationship. We're about to watch Jesus defeat death and appear to the disciples in Luke chapter 24. Guys, I pray Luke chapter 23 has blessed you guys. This has been my favorite episode yet. Go get your live podcast show. Tickets at jesusinthestreet.org/tickets, Los Angeles, January 19th. I love you guys. See you guys tomorrow for the finale and last episode of the consecutive 24-day Christmas challenge. Luke chapter 24 tomorrow. Love you guys.